So all other nerves, everything that's not part of the brain and spinal cord. So these are branches off from the central nervous system to the rest of the body. So they both carry signals to the central nervous system, but also carry signals away from the central nervous system. So it is still part very important. Okay, so let's go with our first Top Hat questions. Right, let me boot up Top Hat. All right. Now here we have a click on target question. So again, just like those other click on targets, click inside the yellow square highlighting a dendrite. Okay, let's see how everyone did. Okay, most of you clicked over here and most of you are correct. Again, the dendrite, these are the parts that receive signals and stimuli from other sources. It might be like the environment, it might be other neurons, it might be other things. But yeah, these are the parts that receive signals. Next question. Click inside the yellow square highlighting a telodendrion. So there might be multiple telodendria in this picture, but only one square is highlighting a telodendrion, singular. Okay, let's see the responses. And some of you clicked over here, but actually also there seems to be a difference whether it's over here or over here. So the people who clicked here are correct. So the telodendria, these are the branches of the axon. You're not quite here at the very end. These are axon terminals at the very end. And then let's start the next question. Now this is a word response. And I kind of gave it away, but let's see how many of you get this. So what do you call this long structure highlighted in red? Okay, let's see the responses. Most of you said axon, and again, if you said axon, you're correct. But axon terminal, no, the axon terminal. So remember, when something terminates, it ends, right? So these are the axon terminals over here. But this part that leads off from the cell body, and then before it branches off to the telodendria, this is an axon. And myelin, we didn't cover that. That's the substance yet. So, but again, the whole structure is called an axon. Actually, for people who said myelin, there are some axons that do not have myelin. So that's another thing. Dendrite, these are the parts over here, the ones that receive the signals. Synapse, synapse is actually the junction between two cells, one neuron and another target cell. And then next question. And then, oh, actually, speaking of axon terminals, click on the one highlighting an axon terminal. Okay, let's see where people click. So I think some people clicked what you call the axon hillock over here. This is the axon terminal. Again, the axon terminal is where that axon terminates. So this is the axon, and it's running and terminating in all these terminals right here. So yes, the axon terminal is over there. Now let's go to a multiple choice question. Which of these are part of the central nervous system? Select all that apply. So here's a hint. There's more than one you have to select to get it correct. Okay, let's see how everyone did. And all right, so, or maybe it didn't allow you to select multiple. It sounds like that. But yes, if you selected brain and spinal cord, you're correct. Cranial nerves, motor nerves, spinal nerves, these are not correct. So again, it's only the brain and spinal cord. That's all the CNS is. But is it not important? Is it simple? Hell no, it's not simple. But that central nervous system, this is the big processing center where all these signals, the stimuli are detected and interpreted, and then it sends out the signals if you want to cause a response to whatever stimuli you have from your environment. Okay. Yeah, so it's both brain and spinal cord. If you selected either of that, you're correct. Okay, so then. All right, so central nervous system, this is what I talked about. You have your brain and spinal cord up there, and then you have your peripheral nervous system. So everything that carries things to the central nervous system, and everything that carries signals away from the central nervous system. So there are two divisions. You call it the afferent division and efferent division. Now, the thing is that, especially if English is your second language, afferent and efferent might sound very similar. So I'm going to purposely mispronounce it and say afferent, like A, letter A, and then efferent. So I'm going to say afferent and efferent just to make it very clear what I'm talking about. But again, this is why spelling becomes very important, especially if you're taking the lab class, because again, they only differ by one letter and they kind of sound similar, but they refer to two completely different divisions. So again, you can have sensory stimuli from your external environment, but also sensory and also internal environment. You also have stimuli from your organs as well. This is what, again, viscera is another fancy term we often use to describe anything related to organs. So these are signals from your organs. And what they do is send signals toward your afferent division. So this is the part that interprets sensory and signals from the environment. Now this is going to go to your brain, or spinal cord at least, and sometimes the brain. And then it's going to undergo that integrative processing function. So it's going to think about it, decide what to do with all the stimuli, and then it'll send signals to the efferent division, the efferent division, right? So the efferent division is now going to carry out the response. And there are two main systems that are subdivisions of the efferent division. Or sometimes it's called the somatic division. But let's talk about the somatic nervous system. So the somatic nervous system is a subsection of your peripheral nervous system and sends signals to, hey, motor neurons. That sounds familiar, right? And motor neurons, these control skeletal muscles and sometimes some glands as well. So this is what I talk about. Now here we have the autonomic nervous system. Then we have two main divisions. Sometimes it's called the nervous systems or divisions. You have two main parts that make up the autonomic nervous system. So you have sympathetic and parasympathetic, and these control like other types of muscles. So not skeletal muscle, but these are the ones that control things like cardiac muscle, the muscle in your heart, the smooth muscles that you find in your blood vessels and organs, and also glands and other organ function itself. So again, this is what we have here. You can carry out effects to your skeletal muscles, like your motor responses, but also to your internal organs as well. And we'll cover the somatic and autonomic nervous system more in detail later on in the semester. So again, Afferent and efferent. I'm mispronouncing these, but again, they do sound very similar. So these are sensory signals toward the central nervous system, your spinal cord and brain. And this is another way you can know that afferent set refers to carrying signals to the brain and spinal cord. So afferent is toward the axial skeleton. So again, the axial skeleton, your skull, your ribs, your spinal column. So this is your afferent division. Now, efferent, efferent. So these are motor signals, and these are your responses that exit the central nervous system. Again, starting with E, and carry it toward effectors. Especially if you're going to any sort of like computer programming or engineering, you have to know sensors and effectors. But things like effectors like muscles and glands. So efferent, these carry out effects. So efferent effects. So again, efferent causes effects. That's the way I kind of differentiate, like, okay, which is A, which is E. And yet another mnemonic that works, which comes first in the alphabet, A or E? A comes before, so right? So then you get the stimuli, then it gets carried to your central nervous system. The responses get carried away from the central nervous system. So it is a sequence of events. You get the stimuli, you get the interpretation and processing, and then you get the response. And here's our typical neuron. So what we have here, so some of you are clicking on these nissal bodies right here. But again, what we have is the signals that travel from the dendrites to the cell body, then along the axon,